Harvard professor Avi Loeb says aspects of these images, including the brightness around the object and its unusual trajectory, suggests it's not natural. Instead, he argues it could be alien technology. You heard that right. So, does this mean ET is real?
For decades, astronomers dreamed of the day another interstellar visitor would pass through our solar system. Oumuamua in 2017 was strange, Borisov in 2019 was stranger, but both were brief, fleeting encounters. Then, in 2025, the dream became reality again, and this time it was colossal. The object was catalogued as 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object ever confirmed. Unlike its predecessors, it was a giant, nearly 7 miles across, dwarfing Borisov's icy nucleus and Oumuamua's thin, elongated shard. It was racing into our system at 130,000 miles per hour, a speed far too high for the sun to capture. Atlas wasn't staying, it was only passing through. But right from the beginning, Atlas defied expectations. Its path was too precise. Interstellar visitors are supposed to tumble chaotically through our system, barely interacting with the planets they pass. Yet Atlas's trajectory skimmed unnervingly close to the inner planets, brushing past Mars by 18 million miles, swinging by Jupiter at just 33 million. The odds of such alignments happening naturally were estimated at less than 1 in 20,000. When NASA fed Atlas's orbital data into Google's AI, the machine flagged it as low probability for natural origin. That single phrase was enough to sow doubt. And then came the brightness. In early 2026, telescopes recorded a sudden, staggering flare. Atlas's brightness spiked by 301% in a matter of hours. Not a gradual rise, not the slow venting of ice and dust seen in normal comets, but an abrupt surge. It was as though someone had flipped a switch. NASA responded quickly. Official statements attributed the flare to volatile release, sunlight warming Atlas's surface, exposing ices that vented into space, a perfectly ordinary cometary process. But the explanation didn't convince everyone. The flare carried no chemical fingerprints, no cyanogen, no carbon dioxide, no diatomic carbon. It was clean light, stripped of the messy gas trails that define comets. That's when the first whispers began. Atlas wasn't behaving like a comet at all. And then, quietly, the leak happened. It began with a handful of images, allegedly taken by the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, or WISE, NASA's infrared telescope designed to map the sky. The pictures weren't public releases. They were raw, calibration-tagged frames, never intended for outside eyes. At first, they seemed ordinary, a faint, glowing blur against a star field. But once processed, the truth began to emerge. Atlas wasn't fuzzy, it wasn't irregular, it was structured. The leaked frames revealed edges where no edges should be, straight lines, sharp curves. One image showed a flat surface gleaming with reflected sunlight, far too uniform for a natural icy fragment. Another appeared to capture faint radial streaks extending outward, like spokes from a central hub. The object didn't look chaotic or crumbling. It looked inside NASA. According to the source, the images were classified almost immediately. Analysts were told to dismiss the anomalies as artifacts, the product of saturation, sensor noise, or over-processing. But copies slipped out, and once outside the firewall, they spread across encrypted forums and private astronomy circles. The verdict among independent analysts was unanimous. These were not the features of a normal comet. And that's when a familiar name resurfaced. Avi Loeb. The Harvard astrophysicist had been dismissed by many of his peers when he suggested Oumuamua was not natural. Its strange acceleration, its cigar-like shape, its reflective surface. To Loeb, all of it pointed to alien engineering. Perhaps a fragment of a solar sail, perhaps a probe. His critics called it speculation, a leap too far. But now, with Atlas showing impossible trajectories, inexplicable flares, and leaked images suggesting structure, Loeb's once radical warning sounded like a prediction come true. The insider who released the images claimed their motive was simple. "We were told to call it a comet," they wrote. But comets don't have edges. NASA continues to deny the authenticity of the leak. The images, they say, are artifacts. The brightness surge, a natural event. Atlas, a comet. Nothing more. But outside official channels, the narrative has shifted. For many, the leaked images aren't just another anomaly. They are the first real proof that interstellar visitors may not be accidents of nature at all. And if Avi Loeb was right about Oumuamua, then Atlas is not just a rock passing through our solar system. It may be something else entirely. Once the alleged images of 3i Atlas began circulating, the reaction was immediate. At first, the astronomy community dismissed them as clever forgeries. It was easy to fake a blurry frame of light and claim it came from a classified source. But then more versions appeared. Raw infrared data, calibration stamps intact, with markers and metadata consistent with NASA's Wide-Field Infrared Survey Explorer. The data was real, and what it showed was unsettling. Natural comets never appear sharp in infrared. Their activity surrounds them in a fuzzy halo of gas and dust, blurring their edges. But Atlas's leaked frames didn't blur. Instead, they suggested geometry. One image showed what looked like a curved edge bending into darkness, smooth and uninterrupted, as if part of a sphere or a massive hull. Another frame hinted at flatness, a reflective plane, glinting more brightly than the surrounding surface. The strangest feature came from a series of long exposures. Faint radial lines extended outward from a central glow, evenly spaced, like the spokes of a wheel. Analysts who enhanced the images couldn't agree on what they were: dust jets, thermal plumes, or something far stranger: supports, struts, or engineered radial symmetry. Independent astronomers processed the data with their own tools. One group in Germany compared Atlas's thermal emissions with known comets. The difference was stark. Natural comets show hotspots, irregular patches where ices sublimate unevenly. Atlas's emission profile was uniform, smooth, almost like parts of the body were radiating heat evenly, as though regulated. That's not physics, one analyst said in a leaked private message. That's design. The most disturbing image of all, though, was the one insiders called the core. In it, Atlas's bright central mass seemed encased within a larger translucent shell, sphere within a sphere, the same symbol that Voyager's corrupted transmissions had allegedly encoded years earlier, the same geometry flagged again and again by AI analysis of unexplained cosmic anomalies. At this point, silence from NASA was deafening. Press releases still called Atlas a comet, but behind closed doors, something else was happening. Memos began leaking alongside the images. Drafts of internal discussions between NASA and JPL staff. In one, the phrasing was chillingly direct. Brightness surge correlates with radial structure. Probability of imaging artifact less than 5%. Probability of engineered surface cannot be dismissed. Engineered surface. Two words no one expected to see in an official document. The phrase spread like wildfire through the astronomy underground. Suddenly, Avi Loeb's name was everywhere again. Back in 2017, when Oumuamua passed through our skies, Loeb had dared to say the unsayable, that it might be artificial. He pointed to its elongated, improbable shape, its unexplained acceleration, its strange reflectivity. Mainstream scientists dismissed him. Too speculative, too bold, a career gamble. But now, in 2026, with Atlas presenting sharp edges, uniform emissions, pulsing light curves, and internal memos mentioning engineered surfaces, Loeb's gamble looked less like speculation and more like foresight. Loeb himself weighed in, carefully but pointedly. In an interview, he said, "If these images are authentic, we have to treat Atlas not as a comet, but as evidence. The question is no longer whether interstellar objects can be artificial, but whether we have the courage to admit it when the data tells us so." His words resonated because the images seemed to confirm his central argument. Nature is messy, but Atlas looked too ordered, too structured. Others tried to soften the blow. Some argued the edges were illusions created by processing. Others said exotic ices from another star system could explain the uniform emissions. But even these voices conceded one thing: Atlas was unlike any comet ever recorded. The debate spilled over into classified channels. According to The Insider, some scientists pushed for open acknowledgement of the anomaly. Others warned against it, citing the dark forest hypothesis. The idea that announcing Earth's recognition of something engineered could be as dangerous as sending a broadcast into the galaxy. One leaked note even hinted at this fear: if Atlas is artificial, it is observing. Announcing that we have identified this fact may constitute engagement. That was the context in which Avi Loeb's name took on new weight. For years, he had been painted as an outsider. Now, with Atlas, the insider leak seemed to say he was right all along. Oumuamua hadn't been a one-off, it had been the beginning. The message hidden between the lines was unsettling. If Loeb was right, then interstellar objects weren't random visitors. They were probes, scouts, signals. And if that was true, Atlas wasn't just the largest interstellar object ever found, it was the most dangerous. By early 2026, the leaked images of 3i Atlas had spread too far to contain. What began as a handful of frames allegedly smuggled from NASA's servers had become the most dissected astronomical data in decades. Everywhere from encrypted forums to mainstream news outlets, people were asking the same question. What if Avi Loeb had been right all along? If the edges, symmetry, and uniform emissions in the images were real, then Atlas was not a comet. It was something else. The question was what? For some scientists, the safest answer was that Atlas was a derelict, a fragment of alien engineering drifting through space long after its creators had vanished, perhaps a broken shard of a Dyson swarm, or the core of a probe whose systems had gone dark. Its flare of brightness, they argued, could be the result of failing mechanisms, sputtering to life for the first time in millennia, an interstellar corpse flashing its last signal before slipping away into the void. But others saw something far more troubling. The pulsing intervals in Atlas's flare, the way its brightness surged at the exact moment it crossed Mars's orbit. It looked less like decay and more like intent, a signal, a burst timed to geometry. In this view, Atlas wasn't dead at all. It was active, observing, broadcasting. That possibility was what frightened insiders the most. If Atlas was a probe, then it wasn't just drifting through our solar system. It was studying it, mapping orbits, recording atmospheres, possibly even cataloging transmissions. And the 301% surge in brightness wasn't a random flare. It was a message, a confirmation pulse, not to Earth but to someone else. The leaks accompanying memos reflected this fear. One note described Atlas as exhibiting behavior consistent with reconnaissance. Another warned that releasing the images publicly might constitute acknowledgement, a phrase that sent shivers down the spines of those who read it. Acknowledgement of what? That we had seen it, that we understood. Here, the dark forest theory loomed like a shadow, the chilling idea that the galaxy is a silent forest. Every civilization, a hunter. To speak, to reveal yourself, is to risk annihilation. Survival means silence, patience, observing without ever announcing your presence. And in that framework, Atlas was terrifying, because if it was artificial, then it had already broken the silence. Its flare wasn't random, it was a broadcast. Not to us, we were merely bystanders. The real message may have been directed outward, to a receiver we couldn't even imagine. A signal saying, I have arrived. Here is what I found. If that's true, then our role is not the recipient. We are the subject, the data, the experiment. No wonder NASA clung so tightly to the comet explanation. To call Atlas engineered would be to admit that Earth is no longer alone in its observations, that we are already under someone else's lens. Avi Loeb had warned this moment might come. Back in 2017, when Oumuamua slipped silently past us, he said it might be alien technology. The world laughed. Scientists distanced themselves. But now, as Atlas loomed larger and stranger, Loeb's words carried a weight that felt less like speculation and more like prophecy. His warning echoed in every analysis of the leak. When something doesn't look natural, we should have the courage to say it might not be. But courage comes with risk. If Atlas is artificial, then the stakes are higher than anyone imagined. Because if the galaxy is a dark forest and Atlas is a scout, then silence may already be broken not by us, but by them. The insider who leaked the images understood this. Their final message was short, written more like a confession than a statement. We thought we were studying it, but what if it's been studying us? The question hangs like a warning. If Avi Loeb was right about Oumuamua and now about Atlas, then interstellar visitors aren't accidents. They're intentional, probes, scouts, messages. And the 301% flare wasn't just a flare, it was a signal, a pulse in the dark, confirming that our solar system is no longer unobserved. Like and subscribe for more stories from the edge of reality.